p.m. and
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the September 20th, 2022 Post Falls City Council meeting. We do have two public hearings tonight, and if anybody wishes to testify, there's forms on the podium in the back. Please fill them out and turn them into our clerk, and we will listen to you. And if you wish to speak, you have to fill out a form. So we ask for no comments from the audience, no applause, etc. But if you do want to speak, fill out a form, and we'll call you up to talk. And we will listen respectfully. Shannon, please note that all council members are present tonight. And we do have an announcement and a proclamation. The annual Shoes and Brews 5K Fun Run is Saturday, October 1st at 2 p.m. at Kiwanis Park. This is a non-competitive fun run for all ages. Register online at postfalls.gov. Years ago, I might have thought any run was fun, but at my age, I don't think that would go anymore. So it might be non-competitive, but I don't know if it'd be fun for me. And the proclamation is Constitution Week 2022. Whereas September 17th, 2022 marks the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designated September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore, I, Ronald G. Jacobson, Mayor of the City of Post Falls, do hereby proclaim the week September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Dated the 20th of September, 2022. And I understand we do have an amendment to the agenda?
We do tonight, sir.
Okay, and
I would move to remove item F from the consent calendar, please.
Second.
I have a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And that item will come back to a future agenda, just for those.
Okay, thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visits? Would you please present the consent calendar as amended?
Item A is minutes, September 6th, City Council meeting. Item B is minutes, September 14th, 2022, Special City Council meeting. Item C is payables, August 30th through September 12th, 2022. Item D is surplus computer disposal. Item E is rights-of-way, Finicus Street and Farmdale Avenue.
Are there any questions on the consent calendar?
I would move to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda tonight is public hearings, and the first item is, and I hope I pronounce it, the Froehlich, is that correct? The Froehlich zone change request. So with that, I'll open the public hearing.
Right. Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, City Council members. Laura Jones, Associate Planner with the City of Post Falls, introducing you to the Froehlich zone change, case file ZC-225. The applicant and owners are Mark Loudon and Zach Froehlich, and the requested action tonight is the rezoning of approximately 1.88 acres from the existing single-family R1 zoning designation to the medium-density R2 zoning designation.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to pause the presentation here for John to come up and talk about the Idaho, or excuse me, the Local Land Use Planning Act for a moment.
Yeah, John Manley, Planning Manager here. This is something we just recently added. And in the future, you'll just see the presenter kind of go over this material. But yeah, so the Local Land Use Planning Act adopted by the state of Idaho, LUPA 6765, they adopt some regulations to guide regulations in regards to the comp plan and the purpose of regulations in regarding to land use matters. So here is an overview of the purpose of the Land Use Planning Act, and the reason why I'm going over this is we have two different items tonight going over housing. So I underlined some here. We're looking to protect private property rights, and additionally, they're looking to accommodate other necessary types of development, such as low-cost housing. In particular, they mentioned some mobile home parks. You can see some other items there listed that they look to protect. They also look to encourage urban and urban-type development with incorporated cities, and they also look to avoid undue or unjustified concentration of populations and overcrowding of land. And so I looked up the meaning of undue in the purpose. It means unjustified. And so how you justify it is through your comp plan analysis and in your review criteria when it comes to a zone change. And so if you're not abiding by your comp plan and your review criteria, then can be deemed as being unjustified. Looking at your planning commission and their planning duties, this is kind of just an overview of what they go through and looking at the comprehensive plan and looking at their decisions and their recommendations to you on matters. And in particular, housing, the comp plan and the state statutes looking at an analysis of housing and the conditions. They want provisions for safe, sanitary, and adequate housing, provisions for low-cost, conventional housing, citing of items such as manufactured and mobile homes, all in all to maintain a competitive market in different types of housing. You've seen that with our residential mixed, looking for diversified housing. We've also done the R2, look at some different types of housing in that. We've removed multifamily to encourage maybe some missing middle. So staff continues to look at creative ways to get diversified housing and keep a competitive market. That's pretty much the gist of that. Any questions?
Question for
That
John?
short little, right, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Okay, now moving back into the Froehlich zone change. The project is located on the northwest corner of 16th Avenue and Cecil, as indicated in red on the map. The existing land use is large lot residential over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. The water provider is Ross Point Water District, and the city will provide wastewater services. Looking at the surrounding zoning, primarily R1 residential is the surrounding zoning designation. There's unincorporated properties just to the north and the east. There's some multifamily lots in the county jurisdiction. There's a mobile home park in here, and then there's a multifamily site up here. And then directly to the north, there's more single-family homes on roughly 1 acre lots. Looking at the zone change review criteria, the first is that amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the future land use map. The future land use designation is low-density residential. You can see in the map here, primarily, again, that whole area is low-density residential. Future land use designation, that orange color is more the medium-density residential, again, in the county area right now. The principal use and character, as outlined in the comprehensive plan, is that it encompasses all types of single-family residential uses up to 8 dwelling units per acre, and densities may vary as appropriate to location, street, and infrastructure capacities. There was a comp plan amendment done, I think within the last year, that R2 is now an implementing zoning district of the low-density residential future land use designation. That was done when we removed R3 in the bulk and placement standards from having single family and just had it as the higher density and we removed multifamily from R2. So that was done at that code amendment time. Looking at the Central Island focus area, which is where the site is located, you can see the star on the map there for the project location. The comp plan says that this area should promote infill development in the context of the area and support development patterns that are interconnected and to provide pedestrian connectivity to all multi-use paths and trails. Looking at the second zone change review criteria is that amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found within the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. Several of the goals that might be applicable to this are goals 1 and 2, and that is to grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health, and maintain and improve the provision of high-quality, affordable, and efficient community services in Post Falls. Goal 6 is to maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network on pace and in concert with the need and plan objectives. Right now, off Cecil and 16th, there's only one corner that has frontage improvements. It's the southwest corner. So as this property develops, the developer would be required to put in all sidewalks, curbs, gutters, swales, street trees, etc. Goal 7 is to plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. And Goal 12, to maintain the city's long-term fiscal health. Going into the policies that support those goals, Policy 1 we talk about with pretty much every annexation and zone change, and that's to support land use patterns that maintain or enhance community levels of service, foster the long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance residential quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development, and implementing the goals and policies of the comp plan. And I'm going to cover all of those within this presentation, as well as Policy 2. Many of these are going to get talked about throughout the presentation. So Policy 2 is to apply or revise zoning designations with careful consideration of factors including the future land use map, which we've already reviewed, compatibility with surrounding land uses, which I've talked about also, infrastructure and service plans, existing and future traffic patterns, and then again, the goals and policies in the comp plan. Policy 8 is to encourage compatible infill development and redevelopment of vacant and underutilized properties within the city limits. Currently, this is a large 1.88 acre site with a single family home, so it may be considered underutilized. Policy 15 is to ensure that adequate land is available for future housing needs, helping serve residents of all ages, incomes, and abilities through provision of diversified housing types. As we've discussed many times in the public hearings, there's not many R2 properties available for development in the city, so this may meet Policy 15. Policy 27 is to work to improve street connectivity in all areas of Post Falls, improving walkability, public health and safety, and transportation efficiency. I talked about the frontage improvements, so that may qualify to meet Policy 27. The next zone change review criteria is that zoning is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic and natural features. I've talked about all of those. Just a reminder, it's over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer as the geographic and natural feature. Looking at transportation, both Cecil Road and 16th Avenue are major collector roadways and can accommodate 4,000 to 12,000 vehicle trips per day. And it's been determined that a development of the R2 densities would not hinder the existing transportation network. This depicts kind of that major collector roadway classification. It's showing as speeds increase on roadways with higher road classifications. You have your commercial, industrial, and higher densities locations. You have your commercial, industrial, and higher densities with those higher road classifications. And you think along Prairie Avenue, there's not many roads intersecting Prairie, and that's by design as it's a principal arterial. We don't want a lot of intersections there with that high speed, and then as speeds decrease, You get your lower collector streets, your minor collectors, and you get your lower densities with more kind of the suburban subdivision look with many driveways. So the 16th and Cecil site is falling right in that major collector roadway classification, with the medium density being a suitable zoning designation for those street classifications. Zone change criteria D is not applicable. Commercial and high-density residential zoning typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. It's not commercial or high-density. The next is that limited or neighborhood commercial and lower-density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from the higher-intensity urban activity areas. This site's roughly a half-mile from both 41 and Mullen, so it is getting further away from those urban cores. The last zone change review criteria is not applicable. Industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning. There's no industrial zoning, and they're not asking for industrial zoning. This is a list of the agencies routed and given a chance to comment. Of those, we had, looks like 6 respond. Post Falls Police Department was neutral. Kootenai Fire and Rescue, as their typical response, they're involved in the site plan review process, so they're reserving their comments for that time. DEQ had no comments at this stage of development. Post Falls School District was neutral. The Highway District was in support of the zone change, and the Yellowstone Pipeline had no comments. And I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Any questions for Laura? Do none, thank you. Does the applicant wish to speak? And would ask that you keep your eye on the clock. Name for the record, please.
Thank you. Tessa Vogel for the record, with Ruin Yeager. I'm one of the applicants, one of the representatives. My co-representative Laura Winters here for any engineering questions you may have. So we want to thank staff for the great presentation. She covered a lot of the things that we will as well. So I'll try to not hold up on all of those. Essentially, at the July 25th hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this same presentation, and we walked away with a recommendation for approval, showing that we did meet all of the criteria, except for the 2 that are not applicable with the commercial and the industrial zoning that came in. So just a little overview. This is a 1.88 acre parcel. Currently at the R1 zoning, and we're looking to go to R2. Whereas right now, roughly there could be essentially 12 lots, but that obviously doesn't take into consideration open space, roads, landscaping, things like that. And the same thing for R2, whereas it looks like we could put a whole bunch on there, but your design criteria will limit us in that. This is just from your parcel map. You can see that we have that county island to the north and to the east. And this aerial, you can see kind of that big cluster of development to the south. And then we have our county island that it's still single-family dwelling, roughly kind of 1 acre parcels. And then we have the church to the west there. So again, we're looking to go to the R2 zoning. This zoning only allows for single-family duplexes and townhomes, so we won't be looking to put in a big multifamily development out there or anything like that. This is your zone map. You can see in that kind of purpley brown, that's the county island. We've got the dark brown to the south, that's some R2 zoning, and where we currently are in that red square. In the yellow is the R1. Something that this zone change can do that comes into your focus area map is that if you were to change the zoning on this property to R2, it's a way to connect to the southern R2 zoning, and that can provide an incentive for annexation of that county island, which is in your comp plan as wanting to do so. And so again, we're looking at that low-density residential and medium-density residential. We're not needing any type of comp plan change in this because both of these designations allow for R1 and R2. This is just your future land use map and a little kind of zoomed in area where you can kind of see how you're wanting the city laid out in the future for your designations of your comp plan. And so 3 of the big things with the zone change is we're looking at streets, the compatibility, and services. So with your city code, R2 zones are appropriate where residentially designated areas are readily serviced by collector and arterial streets. And like staff stated, this is in one of those major collector areas. That's North Cecil and 16th. And then these just connect out to other collectors. For services, the city will provide sewer. We have Ross Point Water, and then it'll be either a Vista Utilities or the Kootenai Co-op for power. So we have the public services that are sufficient to deal with the site. And then just with the compatibility, the site and other developments in this area are all served by the city, Ross Point, and then a Vista or Kootenai Electric. So this isn't different than what's already there. Really, a lot more of the area is suitable for R2 instead of R1 out there, not just this property. And so with that central island area of the city, sorry, allergies. Again, this is kind of leaning towards an incentive for that county island. So if you have a property in that area and you want to be able to develop at that R2 designation up high in that kind of northern corner, there isn't any R2 zoning there right now. With this being approved, that kind of opens the door to connect down to the southern R2 zoning and provide an incentive for developers to then want to annex. And we can see that the red circle, it will be a little hard to see, is in that central island brown area, again, kind of smack dab in the middle. So it just kind of makes sense to bring up the density in this area just a bit. So again, we're just looking at, even though there isn't any R2 zoning bordering this, it's not out of character for the area. It's actually, you could probably do a whole section area of this zone change. It also will provide more housing, different types of housing, yes, not multifamily, but townhomes, duplexes, single family, that are also going to be close in proximity to your commercial district, which the city comp plan and your codes kind of open up for making those smaller lots more accessible to the commercial zones, you know, walking distance, which this would do even through those county islands. Just doing another copy there. Like staff showed, we did receive some agency comments. Of those that responded, they were either neutral, or they just didn't have a comment, but the highway district was in support of the project, and we do expect to see a comment from the fire district at the subdivision stage. So a little recap of the July 25th hearing. We did have 2 public comments, one in favor stating that it just fit this area a little bit more, that we're needing more housing and kind of a variety of types. But they would like to see maybe some HOA restrictions. That's something that the owners would come up with the city. We did have 1 public comment in opposition, and a lot of it was that they just didn't want more traffic. But as staff stated, this wasn't going to have a big impact on the roadway. Another concern was odors from the cars in the area that they're already noticing. That's outside of the control of any developer, and essentially just not wanting any more development in the area. With that, this is a county island that this person, I believe, was part of, and if the city were to annex part of that county island, they're going to have more development, because even at the R1 designation, a lot of those properties can be subdivided as is, just like this one. So there can be an increase in density regardless. And just to recap, I think it's, you guys have letters and I put them as numbers, but what would be A through C, we met for your zone change criteria. Number E, we also met with essentially 4 and 6 not being applicable because we're not asking for a change either from or to a commercial or industrial zoning. So in summary, with our project, the number and size of the lots are going to depend on quite a few things. It's going to be the type of housing, built roads, easements, landscaping, common open space, the setbacks for these structures, and anything else essentially that comes out of the determination from the city. The proposal has the potential to connect to that southern R2 zoning down on East Salina and through the adjacent county islands. The site has public services and infrastructure already available, and these will be sufficient to serve a future development. The proposal would allow for development similar and that's compatible with that's already in the area. The proposal would also allow for a higher density to be developed at, which is an encouragement for the Central Island portion based off of your comprehensive plan. It also has the potential to encourage that annexation, and it would create a subtle transition from your commercial zone, which was in the red, through this property into the rest of your R1 zoning. If you have any questions for
Any
me?
questions? See none?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Shannon? Thank you. Wishing to speak, neutral, Samantha Stiglater.
Samantha Stiglater, Knob Creek, Post Falls, Mr. Mayor, Council, hello, good evening, hi. I'm like usually a really big proponent of R2 because it's not R3, so that makes it better. And I don't think that this is a terrible place for it, but I'm neutral in that I would like to advocate for the public hearings for like a couple of things. One, if we can get that slideshow in the packet beforehand so that the public can look at what goals and policies are going to be specifically highlighted by staff so that maybe we can better understand what those are or what they're going to say to look into them more. I know that in the packet they kind of go through lots and lots of them and say which ones meet, but it's very hard to look into each one of the ones that they're going to advocate are applicable to the public hearing and then be prepared to speak to all like 20 of them. For every public hearing. So I think it would be really nice if we could get those slideshows or get the information that the city is going to present, especially when we bring up things like LUPA and they just get flashed on the screen and you don't really have an opportunity to dig into them and what they're saying and what is being advocated during the public hearing. And I would also love, like, fiscal health was used to advocate for this public hearing. As an example of why this zone change would be appropriate, like how fiscal health in what way for the city. And I really do feel like when we're talking about not just annexation, when we're talking about just zone change, that it would be helpful, especially for the public to really understand what is more positive about the zone change, like in what way does it more meet the goals and policies than the zone that it already is. Like, why are we making the change and why is that more beneficial to the city of Post Falls other than that a developer wants to make the change because they have a product that fits better in that piece of land in the city. Just from being on the other side, watching a lot of these, I think that that would go a long way for especially me and maybe other people to really understand why the city is making the decisions that we're making or why developers are looking to do the things that they're doing. If we could really say R2 is better concretely because of these things than what we're changing it from, not just it also meets goals and policies, so let's just change it. And then just also it'd be really cool if we could see some products sometimes, like when they come up and say we're going to build R2 and it's going to look cool and it's going to look okay and it won't look like multi-family. Like a quick slide of what that product would look like. I think if we could encourage developers to do that would also go a long way to having more support in these things. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
I may real quick.
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
Shirley, you and I talked, I don't know, probably 6 or 8 weeks ago now, about having the slideshows attached in the same area of the website as the agendas. Is that still in the plans?
Yes, I know Shannon, we were working on that and we will make sure that happens.
Thank you.
In opposition, not wishing to speak, is Tara, is it Hinsdale?
Yes.
in opposition due to population density increase related to decreased quality of community living standards. Wishing to speak in opposition, John Leonhardt.
John Lenhart, resident of Post Falls. I was at the meeting the lady was talking about, and I spoke in opposition. The lot that's sitting there has been really unused for a very long time. There are a lot of different lots around the area that used to be unused for a very long time. And we have homes sprouting all over the place. I have lived here 9.5 years. I grew up in Southern California. A lot of people probably in this room, or at least we know people who did, whatever else. If anybody remembers what Santa Clarita Valley looked like at that time, it exploded. Houses were going up everywhere. The difference is, the way they built that place, there was a lot of community stuff available. They had different shopping centers, they brought different, things for people to do, your parks, all that. Just because you can fit things in a, just because you can, doesn't mean you shouldn't, or you should. That's a corner lot. Yeah, like I said, I don't know how many you were talking about and everything else. I think the original talk of the zoning deal was up to 15 lots. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Maybe you could get 4 or 6, maybe lots in there and still have the roadways and everything else feasible, sure. I understand making things look better, making things look pretty. My biggest thing is right now is, where's the stuff for the community? We have Cumberland Park, that's about it. There's a couple other smaller parks. There's only so many grocery stores in the area. We have a lot of people moving into the area, and more power to it. I mean, they're coming up here for a reason. Great quality of life, people are awesome. We need more stuff for the community, the infrastructure for the area, our water, our power, everything else. There's an extra load on this area that I don't know if you guys have looked into, or if there's a plan for it or anything else, and I look forward to getting more information as much as I can. But at least for this particular corner, just be mindful of what's there. I don't know if any of you have seen this corner. I don't know if the developers have seen this corner. I know the fire department sees it because they go through there 3 or 4 times a day. It's a smaller lot. It's right on the corner. The existing home that's there, it's getting redone. So I don't know if they're gonna bulldoze this whole thing and they're gonna make new lots. I don't know what the plan is, and apparently that's all part of the plan. But just be careful what you allow in there, because you don't wanna try to put 10 pounds of stuff into a 2-pound bag. So I know there's more development coming. I know there's other things coming in down the pike and everything else, but there needs to be more community stuff, more things for people to want to go, instead of having to go to CDA to go shopping, to do whatever else. If you're gonna bring people here and put homes up, there needs to be more community stuff. I know we have our different festivals and different things that go along, the 5K run, and but there doesn't seem to be anything really tying the community together. And then, like I said, my other concern is, I hate to use this word because it's been thrown around, but the infrastructure of the town, the infrastructure of the area, the aquifer, the power grid, the traffic. The traffic is the traffic. You're always going to have traffic. So, again, I thank you for your men, women, for your service of what you guys do for the town. Those are my concerns. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Wishing to speak in opposition, Alicia. Not sure on the last name, Alicia. I'll let you say it when you come up, please.
Hi, my name is Alicia Zaz.
I would have messed it up,
It's
so I'm
okay.
glad I
It
waited.
happens all the
Thank you.
time. So, hello, councilwomen and men. Just a thing, I had a lot of dental work done today, so I'm kind of up here at a disadvantage to a certain degree. I'm a resident of Post Falls, lifelong resident, actually, of the whole entire area. I understand growth. I understand the impact that you guys have to weigh every single day because, you know, Coeur d'Alene and Hayden and Athol, and it's all getting filled up and people need to come here. So I'm not speaking from the perspective of, oh no, nobody should be here type of situation. You guys have hard decisions to make every single day that are going to impact our community in one way or the other. Just trying to get ahead of this, and there is no getting ahead of it. There was no getting ahead of it clear back before the shutdown. It was bad then, and it's even worse now. So I don't envy any of your, you know, positions at all, because it's tough. I'm going to go ahead and read from my phone, if that's okay. So unlike what the map showed at the beginning, it kind of cut off a big area there of you know, where this proposed change is going to be. Because within a quarter of a mile, or sometimes less of that area, we already have the following entities, which Post Falls is not big. I mean, you guys are all familiar with our area, I'm sure. But there's Real Life Church right around the corner. You know, I mean, okay, so there's Real Life Church, there's Real Life's new multi-level school that's in the process of being built. There's their soccer field that hold events throughout the whole entire week. There's games constantly. There's traffic and people and kids coming and going all over the place out there. On top of the church's activities, which, you know, it's a ton of traffic. It's a ton of people in and out of there. It's a small little area for that many people on a constant basis. There's also several apartment complexes, the fire station, which he highlighted, and I was at the last meeting, and hurrah that, you know, we love them, but I'm glad they're moving a couple blocks down the road at some point, because it is day and night, you know. Love them, but I know they gotta do their job, but it's tough sometimes. There's also the French Church, which is right across the street, Post Falls High School, and a ton of residential housing. A lot of that was not shown on those first couple of maps. The traffic is loud and nonstop day and night. For more of an impact, because you don't probably live in, or, you know, anywhere close to that area, I don't know. But, you know, I literally thought about recording the sounds at different times throughout the whole entire day. The traffic does not stop, ever. I mean, it's nonstop day and night. It's hard to get out of the subdivision as it is currently. I live in the subdivision, by the way, across the street from the proposed area. The fencing around the subdivision was only built to the height of 4 feet tall. Our house is directly across the street from the proposed zone, so we probably bear the greatest impact, to be honest. We would have no privacy. We don't have privacy right now with the existing fence. We would have no privacy at all in any capacity. The first hearing date was changed, and a lot of our neighbors are not aware of the change of the date. I know that there was a sign that it was initially posted for the notification. There was initial letters that were sent out, and I could be wrong in some of this following that. There was a lot of people who were confused at when they were supposed to be here in that type of situation, because there was a lot of discussion between the neighbors on.
Alicia,
Yes.
your time is up. Could you
Okay.
just wrap it up for me, please?
Yes, so I think there was a lot of confusion initially of who should be here and when, and how those changes were supposed to be made. That was it. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant wish to rebut?
Alright, Tessa Vogel for the record. So, completely understand the concerns from the public. A lot of these are things, though, that the developer wouldn't have any control over, like the existing issues with the traffic. At the July hearing, we heard about that as well. The increase in density, like staff stated, it's not gonna have a great impact on the road. It's really gonna have no impact. There could be a few additional pieces of property that aren't gonna be apartments, like the multifamily, that can go on. That's not even gonna be allowed in this zone. At best, you could have townhomes. The lack of privacy, while I sympathize and I understand what somebody else is doing on their property, right now, this could be developed, and that could be an encroachment they would think, on their privacy, but it's not. They're doing the development on their property. It'd be the same if it was vice versa. That's not an issue of the zone change. Infrastructure concerns were brought up, but both the city and Ross Point Water stated that they will be able to fully serve this development for multiple lots. Same thing with power. So if there was an issue with infrastructure, those entities would have made us known about that. Let's see. The lack of parks and shopping for the public to enjoy. There is a commercial district on the other side of that county island, but that is not a requirement of any type of subdivision, is to provide shopping, parks, things like that. Common areas, yes, for the people within that development, which this will have, just like the subdivision to the south. But the availability for parks and enjoyment entities isn't something that the developer is required to do, or any developer is required to do. Let's see. Might be about it, I think. If you have any questions for me on that?
Any questions at this point? See none?
Thanks.
Thank you. With that, I'll close the public hearing. So, council, you want to just, I guess the first thing we'll do is walk through these criteria, and then we'll have discussion after that.
Was it appropriate to ask a question of engineering or planning about,
You want to ask, can you ask a question first, or?
So at this point, with the record is closed, you can reopen the record and ask questions if you would like, but that would open up a chance for rebuttal again.
I just have and I should have asked it before, but a question about access onto Cecil and 16th.
It's at the pleasure of the mayor and the council. If you want to reopen the record for that, that's great.
I don't know if I've ever done this.
Sorry.
I'm going to reopen the public hearing. Mr.
So,
Malloy.
I don't know if my question will be directed at Rob or Bill or John, but what's the access points onto Cecil and or 16th look like for development of this property? I know nothing's set in stone, but what's allowable?
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Malloy, with your question on access, major collector roadways, which are what 16th Avenue and Cecil Road are, for development or R2 type development, they would not be allowed to have individual driveways onto those roads. So we would configure any type of development so that it would be for vehicles to enter the roadway front facing. Generally, that would either be through a private roadway, a smaller public roadway, or it could be through a shared driveway approach. Being that close to the intersection, we would also be trying to pull those access points a little bit further back from the intersection so that we are avoiding a situation where vehicles have a tough time getting in and out because of the proximity to what we call the queuing area or the storage area within that intersection. We do have a spacing requirement, but at the same time, we have to allow access to the site. And this is a fairly small site for our access controls. So I would anticipate at the very least one access point, probably from 16th Avenue, but possibly two access points, one on Cecil and one on 16th. Is that sufficient? Okay.
Thank you.
So now we would allow anybody who wanted to rebut that. They can't testify to anything else, but if they have information different than that,
So if anybody cares to
who
rebut
testified?
or a comment on that one point, I'll give you an opportunity. Forward, please.
Again, my name is John Lenhart. The intersection in question, there's probably, I don't know, a couple 100 feet of fence line from the point of the intersection, which would be the northwest corner. So you have the church entrance on 16th, and then you have a residential, which is part of the county property and everything else, sitting on the north side of would be the north side of the property. Like I said, they're redoing the existing structure that's there. I'm not sure what all they're doing, whether they're just making it pretty or whatever they're doing. I just know there's Tyvek being wrapped around the building and all that goodness.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you're sort of wandering off
We
the
gotta
limited
stay
scope.
on-
No, I understand
Go through
that.
that, okay.
But the thing, like, my thing was, in the process of wandering, was pointing to the fact that there's an existing structure there, and if you're gonna put homes there, where are you gonna put this driveway? You wanna make an access road to there? I'm trying to do the math here, and size of home, existing lot to this, to where this existing lot is. You're gonna have like a one-way in, one-way out kind of swing into this thing is probably the only way you're gonna be able to pull that off. You're not gonna have a two-way driveway. It's tight. And it looks like a big property when you start stacking, homes on there and a common area and whatever else. The property into itself and everything else, I'm not sure what the exact length or dimensions are of the outside part of the property. But I think the run against 16th is longer than it is, or excuse me, on Cecil is longer than it is for 16th. So as far as what that goes, that's where the process is. It's gonna be tight as far as limited accessibility to stay away from the roadway and still be able to have your homes in there.
Sure.
So,
Thanks. Anyone else?
Applicant?
The applicant wish to rebut that?
How much
Just a
time do we
moment
give
for the
her?
record. With the entrance and exit points, we do have design professionals at our company who will be working with the city on what is going to be required and what's going to be the safest. That's also going to come into play with the fire department. They will be commenting on the subdivision process and about what they're going to require. The police department is actually routed as well, so they'll probably have some comments. But what the entrance and exit points are going to be extremely limited to what the city will allow and what the property allows as well. So it's not going to just be willy-nilly anywhere. It's going to be to your specifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Going once, going twice. Close the public hearing again.
Sorry about that.
All right. So, Mr. Wilson, should we go through these points?
So we have the zoning criteria. I'm happy to lead you through them if you're ready.
I believe we are.
All right, criteria 1, is the requested zone change consistent with the future land use map?
Yes. Low density, R2 fits that.
Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Consistent policy, or criteria 2, is the requested zoning consistent with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan?
Definitely, the infill development, I believe, applies there. Does it? And pedestrian connectivity.
Pedestrian connectivity certainly does on the corner there.
And that deals with the transportation network, I guess. That's pedestrian transportation, but any other comments? Okay.
Criteria 3, zoning is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features.
Street classifications are certainly adequate.
Connection to the sewer for the infrastructure, protection of the aquifer.
Anybody else? Okay. Number 4 is non-applicable.
And the next one, which would be number 5, limited neighborhood commercial is, limited neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from high-intensity urban activity.
Yes, I believe it was stated that it's a half-mile west of Highway 41 and north of Mullen, so we've got about a half-mile.
We're talking about a medium density, I know it's still a implementing zone in the low density area of the comprehensive plan. There's some, as was pointed out, some high intensity uses around it also. So it fits with the criteria, I would say, because it's not very far away from high intensity uses and it's not right on top of them either.
Anybody else want to comment? That takes us through the criteria. Council, up for your deliberation.
So based on our comments before, Am I correct? It doesn't really matter our opinion on this. If it fits the criteria, we have to go with that. Is that correct?
So, that's an interesting way to pose the question. So, in order to grant an approval, they have to meet all of the criteria. That doesn't mean necessarily that if you all believe that it meets the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, if it meets the future land use map, if it meets the rest of our criteria, then it's entitled to an approval. If you think that there are other comprehensive plan policies that sort of mitigate that and cut a different direction, you're free to say there are other comprehensive plan policies that say this shouldn't be approved, but you'd need to spell that out and explain why. But yeah, this isn't the only zone that fits in this area, at least according to the future land use map. So you would have to weigh whether it meets the other criteria.
You have comments on that, Kenny?
I just have two concerns. The one is the traffic. I'm very familiar with this intersection, and I have similar concerns with how close it is to the intersection. And then the other one is just, again, it was mentioned not seeing the need or what the benefit is. I don't know that I could point to any of the policies that it fits or doesn't fit.
What about other comments?
For me, I think one of the goals of the comprehensive plan, throughout the comprehensive plan, is does this provide for a diversity of housing types? And so as to an advantage over the existing R1 zoning, I would say this does, because it could include single-family housing. It could also include townhomes, duplexes, that sort of thing. Being right on the corner and the existing development, you've got the church right next door, and I think it would almost look more odd to have 4 single-family homes on a corner next to a church just south of a really big church, pretty close to a commercial district. It would seem to make more sense on that corner to have a somewhat higher density next to what it's not commercial, but to a more public type use directly to the west. As far as the traffic goes, I don't spend a lot of time in that part of town, but yeah, there's a lot going on. In real life, there's thousands of cars that go back and forth every week. I don't know how busy that the church is. 16th Street, once 41 is finished right there, is going to get even busier because people wanting to go east and west and avoid I-90 and Prairie and that sort of stuff are going to make pretty heavy use of 16th. So that having been said, I don't think a few duplexes on the corner of Cecil and 16th is even going to get noticed. We're talking 8-10 units tops by the time we have 1 or 2 egresses onto 16th and or Cecil. It's got to be an interior road. There's not going to be, it's not possible to have much development on a 1.8 acre plot, especially where R3 is not being considered, which is good. So I think it fits on the corner, and I think the potential downsides are not even to be noticed with all the other activity going on in the area.
Any comments?
Yeah, I would have probably 3 things to point out that I like about this. One is we talked a little bit about pedestrian connectivity, and it affects traffic pattern with the improvements on that corner. I think we'll be much safer there on that corner. Various housing types. It seems like when we get other proposals in front of the council, the only other type of housing that we see more frequently is high density. So I do like seeing kind of that middle ground of density housing, which this is great. R2, I think, is a good product. The third thing is talking about one of the goals and policies is to foster long-term fiscal health of the community. And in my mind, what that means is providing opportunity in the case of R2 with townhomes to have an entry-level opportunity for people to gain equity in their home to then be able to move up into more of an R1 situation. That's one of the biggest things I don't like about apartment housing, is it kind of, in my mind, creates the rental trap where you're there, you're not building on anything. So I do think that that's a healthy way of building fiscal health in our community.
Josh, do you have a comment?
I was just going to basically agree with all these guys. I like it, it fits. My only thing I don't like is how close it is to the intersection, but I do like the frontage improvements that it'll create with the high school up there and kids walking to school. I've been up and down that road all the time taking kids to school, so my only concern is how close that'll dump, but again, like you said, I don't think it's gonna be hugely noticed with how busy it already is, so.
Thank you. Carrie?
It's a 1.8 acre site. It's infill development, so it's not a massive subdivision. And for the different types of housing that will be on there, it's definitely an advantage. And the improvements to 16th and Cecil with curbs and sidewalks definitely is a plus. So I think it not only fits, I think it will be welcome.
Lynn, you want to add?
Well, I just was gonna say, I think our engineering staff will do their best to figure out the roadways, entrances and exits that are of a concern. And again, there's not gonna be a lot on that lot, so I think it fits well there.
Entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve Froehlich zone change file number ZC-22-5.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Shows,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next public hearing tonight is the Ashford Place annexation. And with that, I will open the public hearing.
Evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President, and council members. Ethan Porter, one of the planners of the city, here to present the Ashford Place annexation. The owner of this property in discussion is Coca Land LLC. The applicant is Dobler Engineering. They are requesting tonight to be annexed into the city with the zoning designation of single-family residential R1 on approximately 12.26 acres. We can see that the project here is hatched in red. It's along McGuire Road, just west of it, south of Grange Avenue at the southwest corner of Grange and McGuire. Also intersects at McGuire, McGuire and Howell on the south side there. Currently, the land is being used as large lot residential within Kootenai County. Physical characteristics of this site is over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, as well as various trees on the site. It's not super dense with trees, but there are trees located on the site. Water provider is the East Green Acres Irrigation District, and the wastewater would be provided by the city of Post Falls. Looking at the zoning, we can see that it is across McGuire Road. We have the R1S subdivision there on the east side of McGuire Road, and on the west is all county land, and so this would be extending the city to the west side of McGuire Road. Looking at the zone change review criteria A, we look at amendments to the zoning map being in accordance with the future land use map. And so I'll cover that future land use map in the upcoming slides, but the future land use map designates this site as transitional. And so that basically means the implementing zoning district basically follows suit with the focus area and kind of have that focus area guiding kind of what we're looking at for that location as far as uses. And so here you can see the future land use map designates this as the blue, which is transitional, and to the east across McGuire Road is low-density residential R1 in the yellow, and then further to the west, west of Corbin Road is that business commercial, that pink that you see there. And so south you do see kind of that dashed line. It's outside that commercial node area for that future land use designation. Focus area for this location is the West Prairie. Basically, the highlight of this one that we look at is basically that bullet point there. Mixed residential is envisioned between McGuire Road and Corbin Road with higher densities near commercial corridors and arterials. This area may benefit from a sub-area plan that examines lot and block development patterns to
I'm
aid
sorry.
transition.
Excuse me just a moment. We're having trouble hearing. I don't know if you can get a little closer or if we can turn it up at all back there. Are there any other options?
Okay. I can speak louder.
Okay.
So.
Please raise your hand if you can't hear, okay?
So this area may benefit from a sub-area plan that examines lot and block development patterns to aid transition of 5-acre lots. Looking at this annexation, this proposal, we can see that some benefits may be from the annexing this piece of property in for the request would be to prevent substandard development in the county, address future needs through annexations, promote compatible, well-designed city development, and address lack of available single-family residences. And this may create housing for residents of all ages. And then we do have impact fees that are paid per or upon development of the sites and any development within the site as it goes forward. Some concerns that we have as well that may be applicable to this is approximately 25% of workforce can afford single-family housing, whereas 5 years ago about 75% could afford. Adequate parks west of McGuire Road. Currently right now where this project is sitting basically to the east, there's Park in the Meadows as well as Beck Park that can service this location per the parks map that I'll show in the upcoming slides, but there's a lack of it to the west. We look at the impact to schools, which is addressed through their comment letter that was provided to, or I guess the agency provided that and in their notice as well. And then parking is addressed through single-family development, and so usually that's 2 parking stalls per home. So looking at, as I mentioned, that parks map, we see that's within the service area of those parks mentioned to the east, but the highlighted portions to the west, that kind of green hotspot, is kind of where they're looking at least Parks Department is looking at purchasing land and potential having parks located in that area for that. And the impact fees that are paid will help kind of guide and help them attain money to acquire land as such in those areas. Looking at the zone change review criteria B, we see that the amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found within the comprehensive plan. We look at goals 5, 7, and 12, some from the previous hearing that you've already heard, but basically keeping Post Falls neighborhoods safe, vital, and attractive, and then plan for and establish types of quantities, land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability. And then goal 12, maintain the city of Post Falls' long-term fiscal health as well. Kind of looking at some of the policies, we have policy 1, which again was mentioned earlier tonight too in the previous hearing, but we look at community level of service, the long-term fiscal health of the community, resident quality of life, as well as compatible, well-designed development, and then goals and policies through the comprehensive plan and master plans. Policy 2 also piggybacks a little bit on policy 1 as well as kind of what I stated already. But future land use mapping, which was discussed, the compatibility with surrounding land uses, the infrastructure and service plans, existing and future traffic patterns, and goals and policies in the comprehensive plan as well, again. Policy 14, we look at the annexation procedures established by Idaho state statutes and applicable city ordinances, making sure that we follow those. This is part of that process as well. Ensure that adequate land is available for future housing needs, helping serve residents of all ages, incomes, and abilities through provision of diverse housing types and price levels. And so looking at the zone change review criteria C, which can also be found, these points in the staff report, but we look at zoning being considered through such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community planting, geographic or natural features. Again, this is over the Ratchman Prairie Aquifer. They do have some larger trees on the site. We also look at the McGuire Road being a minor arterial roadway, as well as being able to accommodate about 6,000 to 15,000 vehicles per day, which projected volumes for 2035 along this roadway would accommodate per the engineering staff comment in our staff report. And then the proposed zoning is compatible with land uses anticipated within the city's master plans. Most of this area is all residential anyways, county or city, so. We look at zone change review criteria D, which is not applicable as it is not a commercial high density request. But we do have zone change review criteria E that it falls under the lower density residential zoning, and so we have to make sure it's typically assigned for properties as they proceed farther away from the higher intense urban activity. Basically, those mainly are along Highway 41, Mullen Avenue, Southeast Way, and some along Spokane Street. which this location is not near those higher intense urban activity locations. Zone change review criteria F we look at is not applicable as they're not requesting industrial zoning. Here's kind of the subdivision plan that they proposed, and so you can see the average lot size is about 10,000, just shy of 11,000 square feet, but they go from anywhere from 10,000 square feet up to just under 20,000 square feet. North is to the right, so you can kind of see how they propose to lay this out. There is that pedestrian connection there to the southeast as well that I'm assuming the applicant will be able to kind of discuss a little bit more on. Looking at the R1, just to kind of give the table, the official bulk and placement table, R1 single family allows for 6,500 minimum for a square foot. They have max lot coverage of 40%, minimum lot width of 60, and they have their setbacks listed there as well as the maximum height of 35 feet. So the subdivision approval would be contingent upon this annexation being approved, so they won't be able to move forward with subdivision until they're annexed and approved to do so. This is the agencies that it was routed to. And I did want to mention, I guess, on that subdivision plan, they do meet in staff's review for planning and zoning. They meet the requirements for width and size for that as well. So we wouldn't let them come forward with a plan that didn't meet that. Of these agencies, though, that were routed, we do have responses from Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, who reserves comments for the permitting process. We have the Post Falls Police Department being neutral, and then Department of Environmental Quality, they had no comment at this stage. And then the Post Falls School District provided a letter with data. They remain neutral, basically showing their capacities. So I believe that's in your staff report or your packet. The Post Falls Highway District, they want the 10-foot of right-of-way dedication with the 10-foot road drainage easement for future expansion of Grange Avenue. And then Yellowstone Pipeline Company, they had no comments or questions regarding this proposal. That being said, I would entertain questions that you may have for
Any questions for Ethan?
staff.
Joe?
This might be more directed at Warren, but is, so R1 allows for lots down to 6,500 feet. The only other zoning code we have right now that's larger lots than that is R1S, which is 1 acre lots. For R1, as we're considering this, is it possible to put a contingency on it that the minimum lot size must be 10,000 square feet or more?
So you can, we do have an annexation agreement that's in your annexation and development agreement that's in your packet. We have not anticipated that as a concern. That would be unusual to put something like that in, but it's something we could certainly do. Ethan, has the subdivision on this been approved?
Yes, it has.
So,
They're just pending
so
this.
at this point, if they wanted to do something different, they would have to go back through the hearing process because it's already approved.
So it's.
If that makes sense. So if you deny annexation or you deny a zoning, the subdivision goes away because it was approved contingent on that change. But if they wanted to increase the density, would require them to increase the lot counts, which then is going to require them to go back through the public hearing process.
All the way to city council or to P&Z?
It would just go through P&Z, just like a normal subdivision.
Downsides of making a requirement of a 10,000 foot minimum lot, just thinking, as I always do in the case of, okay, this developer decides not to develop this property, sells it off to somebody else, then what?
So spitballing here a bit because I'm not sure exactly what possible downsides there might be. One would be we're putting things in an agreement that we don't normally have in the agreement. So when staff is doing a review of a building permit, for instance, they may not think to go look in that location for a lot restriction. That would be unusual. So you're increasing a little bit the risk that they'll miss something in a review. Also, potentially loss of some flexibility for the property owner down the road. There may be a change in circumstances that may warrant a 9,500 square foot lot or an 8,000 square foot lot, and they would lose that flexibility. But again, I'm spitballing from
They
what
could
I said.
always come back, correct?
Let's come back to council and get that.
So they could. It would require another public hearing before the city council to make that change. Before they could then go through the subdivision process and have another public hearing on the subdivision.
Okay.
obviously the community development director, I just wanted to add a quick comment, and Warren covered basically everything. And I think that just from the administration level of looking at every single R1 subdivision to look for changes to the code, such as limiting it to a 10,000 square foot minimum, does end up leaving staff in a precarious position that if this isn't developed now and maybe it comes back in 5 years or 10 years, the first thing that they're going to do is like, okay, it's zoned R1. Okay, we apply R1 standards to it. It's unlikely they're going to try and look for these development agreements. When the fact that it is going through that subdivision process already and has gone through it, it really lends to the fact that that's probably how they're going to develop it. No guarantee, but that's most likely how it will happen. And they would have to go back through that process if they were to develop outside that plan as it stands. So,
Thank you. Any other questions? Applicant, wish to speak. Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you, Gordon Dobler, Dobler Engineering, representing applicant, representing the owner, Colca Land. Okay. So staff did a good job, touched base on a lot of things. I want to just come back for a minute. So we came to council and P&Z obviously last year with just a request for R1 in an annexation without any subdivision plan. And there was a lot of concern about, okay, you know, we get the R1, but without knowing exactly what we're doing, it was a lot of questions. How much traffic, how many lots, you know, really what's going on. The neighbors came and said, yeah, we're concerned too, without more information. And in the end, the council said, you know, we're just not comfortable with the R1 without knowing more. So subsequent to that, we had a meeting with the neighbors. It's been, I think it was in last November, and I'll present some of that here tonight. But we met with the neighbors, gathered some of their concerns. It was mostly an informational meeting. We had the subdivision mapped out, pretty much like you see it tonight, but we did make some corrections to it after the meeting to address the neighbors' concerns and council's. So that part of it really hadn't changed. What we did then was come back to P&Z with the subdivision and the annexation so they could see this is what we're planning to doing, and answered a lot of the concerns anyway. Some of them are still there, but that's what we're back here tonight. We've gone to P&Z. They have approved the subdivision, again, contingent on annexation, and we understand that. There is a density cap. So when we came back with the subdivision, because it's an R1 zone, we're asking for lots a lot larger than the 6,500. So what we've done is, staff has put it into the annexation agreement where there's a density cap, 2.7 units per acre. It doesn't directly translate into 10,000 square feet, but the density cap would still be there if you had a smaller lot, which we aren't proposing with the approved subdivision. Let me just chase that rabbit real quick. If we're annexed tonight, we've already got the subdivision approved. That's what we're gonna build. So what you see, what Ethan showed you, and I'll go over it real quick, with the subdivision, that's what we're gonna build. The density cap assures that you couldn't get a density any more dense than that. So we think that addresses the issues, but again, it's up to you. So that's where we are tonight. Let's, future land use map. I want to take a minute to talk about that too. So Ethan's presented it, fine. We've got R1S, this is residential, this is transitional, and this is business commercial. Well, here's what we want to say, and that is, in the zoning findings, it says, yes, the lower densities are appropriate as you get away from the downtown core, from the higher intensity uses. But we think you've got a special case or other considerations here, and that is, as you move further west, you get to Corbin Road, now you're in business commercial. So in this corridor, you're actually headed towards potentially denser development with business commercial. So here in this corridor, you need to go from, an R1S, larger lots to the business commercial, and that's why this is zone transitional. So you would see it, we believe, transition to denser as you get closer to this business commercial. We think that was certainly in our thinking when we came forward, and you'll see it in a minute, but the development we're proposing is certainly not high density. Obviously, 10,000 square foot minimum lots approaches more an R1S than it does an R1, and you can do that, see that. I think that's about all I want to say on that one. Current zoning, again, same discussion we just had, transitional areas up to Corbin. We think that the R1 with the zoning cap is certainly more compatible with the surrounding zoning. Speaking of the surrounding land use anyway, the zoning is R1S, but it's all R1S with PUD. So these aren't 1 acre lots. So you've got lot sizes vary from about I see it right here, 0.4 acres to 1 acre, with the majority of them being half acre. So yes, it's R1S, but they're not 1 acre lots. So they're half acre. So we're proposing more like 1/4 of an acre, and again, begins to transition towards a potentially denser development in the business commercial, and we think that makes more sense for this property. This is the subdivision that was approved by the Planning Commission. Again, minimum lot size of 10,000, average is 10.8, the largest is 19.9, and that's one of the existing homes along Grange Avenue. You can see the access points. I'll talk about traffic as we move forward. Again, what we're doing tonight is zoning prior to annexation. It's not subdivision, but based on comments we've received before last year, we think that providing this information helps the council make a more educated decision on annexation. We do have a little dedicated open space tract down here where we will have pedestrian access out to McGuire, and we've already talked to staff about combining this open space tract with the adjacent Hargrave right-of-way to landscape that and make an even bigger area until if and when Hargrave is improved. We would have open space use of it. It's city right-of-way, understand that, but at this point we're agreeable. So if staff think that's appropriate, we would certainly do that and make a nicer green space out there. Again, traffic, what we're proposing, 32 homes, you've got 302 trips a day, which translates into about 25 in the peak hour, so 1 car every 3 minutes. Access is going to be onto McGuire at this point. Through the subdivision process, staff has looked at the spacing from the existing Grange intersection, feels that that is a safe location for it. And we'll talk about pedestrian access and crossings and whatnot in a minute. But I do want to come back to say, because traffic, again, is a concern, not just in Post Falls, but everywhere. The staff has said that McGuire Road will ultimately be sized for the 2035 projected volumes that could approach 15,000. So it will be built. We will widen it, so it will be built to accommodate the traffic from not only this subdivision, but from future development all along McGuire and in this area. Utilities. So everything's available. It's basically in McGuire here. We also have water and Grange. So again, concern over infrastructure and adequacy of infrastructure. When these subdivisions are proposed, we go to the utilities. So we have been to East Green Acres, and they've looked at their plan. They do with every proposed subdivision and say, yes, we have. Not only do we have the infrastructure adjacent to your property, but we have the ability to serve this. In the case of East Green Acres, which is normally the case for subdivisions that are served by an irrigation district, is they're already serving this. They've served it as farmland for years. So in the end, it's not a significant increase in the water demand because of the irrigation. Irrigation far exceeds normal domestic. I mean, just look at your own bill. When it goes up in the summertime, when you water your lawn, I mean, personally, mine's probably, no, less than that. Well, I use 4,000 gallons a month for my house in the wintertime, and I'm up to maybe 50 or 60 with irrigation. I'm just making a point that irrigation is far higher demand than residential. So the adequacy of water is there. Sewer, staff looks at the sewer master plan. Is the infrastructure in place? Is there capacity in the downstream pipes? The answer to all that is yes before we ever get to this point. Also with this particular project, there are 2 houses that are on septic. Those would be eliminated. Again, as an aside, if this was developed in the county, it would all be septic. So protection of aquifer, developing it with sewer does protect the aquifer. You eliminate the need for capacity. Still on sewer, we are really at the end of this service line. Let me come back. Because of grades. So the grades for the sewer, it's coming up, actually coming in here from Howell, and we pick it up and bring it through, but it's shallow enough to where really the sewer, once it gets through it could serve the Adams piece and it could serve this adjacent piece, which Colca also owns, but it would go to Grange and no further. So it doesn't really open the door for additional development. It's really pretty much these properties that would allowed to be sewered. I do want to talk about storm. We kind of skip over that, but you know, a lot of times residents don't understand how storm is treated, how the aquifer is protected. So for the greater benefit, stormwater is treated through swales, and the city requires us to build those. So all impervious goes into vegetated swales where we implement the standard of practice in aquifer protection, where they're planted with grass, the grass is maintained. You see that in all your subdivisions. And then we have dry wells that directly inject it once it's treated by the grass into the aquifer. So any impervious surface created in our subdivision is treated to the regional standard by DEQ and Idaho through their manual of best practices and accepted pretty much standard for this neck of the woods. So it's treated and does provide protection for the aquifer for all the impervious surfaces. Transportation, again, this property would access McGuire. You've heard that it's a minor arterial, and the capacity, not just for this subdivision, but for regional development out to 2035, it has capacity for that. And we would be widening McGuire, well, and you'll see that in a minute, and we'd be putting bike paths and pedestrian access. Let's take a look at that. So here's our access point would be here. We've also provided an access to the Adams parcel. That's really at staff's request for potential future development, and access to this parcel right here, which Colca also owns. We would be building a multi-use path along McGuire that would extend to Grange and down to Howell. So pedestrian access from the subdivision, as you saw, will come out onto McGuire down here, and also pedestrian access across McGuire would take place at this intersection of Grange and McGuire, which is typically where you would cross pedestrians, and then they would also potentially could cross at this intersection with Howell. So you've got two, what we'd call, I'll call them safe, but that's where drivers would expect to see pedestrians at those intersections. Schools, staff talked a little bit about it. Here's some interesting information, but the Urban Lands Institute has done many studies, and one of them is, how many school-age children does a typical single family generate? 0.6 school or 0.6 kids per single family. So if we want to talk statistics, we're in the 18 to 20 kids would be generated by this subdivision. Parks, staff talked about parks. Just summarize it, we've got 5 parks within 3/4 mile radius, and we have pedestrian connectivity for kids to get to them, or adults. I go to a park every once in a while, take the grandkids. Comp plan goals, the R1 is an implementing zone in the future land use map in the transitional zone. So staff has done a pretty thorough job of going through them. I don't think I need to go through all of them, but these are some of them. Maintain and improve high quality, affordable, efficient community services. Keep neighborhoods safe, vital, and attractive, through the standards Post Falls has for subdivision development, their street lighting, their sidewalks, pedestrian access. All of those issues are addressed through the subdivision construction standard. Quantities of land for affordable housing. Let's just, staff has already touched base on those. I'm just reiterating them.
Mr. Builder, your time's up. Can you wrap it up?
Just let me touch base real quick on the neighborhood meeting. We had a neighborhood meeting. We presented them who we are, what we need, what we intend. You've seen the map, gave them pictures of the kinds of product that we're putting in our subdivisions, and address the concern. There you go.
Thank you. Any
Sorry
questions,
about
Mr.
that.
Builder? Thank you.
No questions?
Nope. Don't see any.
Actually, I do have
Oh,
one.
go ahead.
Sorry. Clarification, I don't know if it's for you or staff, but the 2.7 units per acre cap, I didn't see that in the packet. Is that in the annexation agreement or is that in the subdivision agreement?
It's in the annexation, section 2. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I apologize, in the staff report, it wasn't cited as an attachment. It was in a long agenda. I looked while I was sitting there. It's page 183 of the PDF as an attached at 2.7 as a density limitation to the development as signed by the applicant.
So that's part of the annexation agreement, so even if this development doesn't happen and it gets sold and somebody else buys the property.
Yeah, it carries
still-
with the land and goes with title.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I made it with that too.
Wishing to speak in favor, Jeremy Voller.
Evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council. Jeremy Voller, 3844 North Pasture View, here in Post Falls. I'm the owner of Anthem Pacific Homes, one of the intended builders for this project. Currently, I'm finishing up a project just north of the Meadows, and I know a big concern is the transitional density and the sizes of the lots, going from a ½ acre to 1 acre lots. The project that I'm just finishing up is by the same developer, and I intend to build these houses in a majority of this project as well with this developer. But we've done the same type of housing and product that we're intending for this just north of the Meadows in that transitional zone, 0.25 to 0.3 acre lots. We're going to be doing a similar project or a product that you saw Gordon display up there at the end of his presentation. Nicer homes, larger lots, home shop packages. That's the intent with the west side of the Meadows, which is also this transitional zone. So we're going to be tailoring our product as part of that. So I just wanted to be up here to say, or to ask if you had any questions for me as the intended builder for the project, and happy to answer any questions you might have there.
It was nice to see you.
Thank you.
See that? Thank you. Wishing to speak in neutral, Angela Adams.
Good evening, everyone. Angela Adams. My address is 2534 West Grange Avenue. My property is surrounded on all 3 sides by the developer. We purchased our home in 2018, and we were able to do so because of hard work. We're not high-level professionals. We do not make 6-figure incomes. My husband is the primary income earner in our home, and he does that by working an hourly wage job We are the workforce housing that people talk about all the time. We were able to purchase our home because we bought a home that was a split-level home. We lived in it for years to build equity. We did some very aggressive budgeting, and my husband worked a lot of overtime. That's what people that want a little bit of elbow room with a house, with a shop, and RV parking do. They work hard. We were not looking for a residential lot where there have been lot line adjustments, variances made, so you can put a shop 5 feet off the property line. Being raised here, being multi-generational, people want the elbow room. We did our due diligence when we bought in 2018. We knew the 3 properties around us were rental properties. We know it's going to be developed. But there were 2 things that we were thinking logically. One is that the city would not be in a hurry to land grab county property. There's still enough infill property to be developed. Looking up some statistics, Post Falls is about 14 square miles is what I saw. That's gonna equal about 9,000 acres. Accessing what's of public record at the Kootenai County's assessor office, if you pull bare land parcels in the Post Falls jurisdiction, my records from this of public record data was 1,485 parcels, equaling 3,306 acres of bare land in Post Falls. If you then separate lots that are 5 acres and above, 196 parcels equaling 4,146 acres. So since the city has 7,452 acres of bare land or open land, there's enough that I don't think that needs to be annexed. The second thing is that we thought it would be developed in a way that would maintain the integrity and the culture of the area with the half-acre lots. The meadows and prairie meadows have been brought up, but we also have by the meadows just south and Garnet Ranch, which is north, and 5-acre parcels. So if you vote yes, I would like to know why you feel now is the right time to annex county jurisdiction property. And also, if you vote yes, if you're only doing so because the comprehensive plan requires you to. It seemed like last year there were several of you that said R1S would be better, but it seems this year hands are tied that you have to vote transitional R1. You were voted to this council for your intelligence and your dedication to the community, but your hands are tied if you can't voice your opinion and vote what you think is best, that you have to follow these criteria that are so vague. Every answer is NA, or there's one item that you can say yes on. I almost feel like if I said, let's annex my rabbit hutch, and you went through the criteria, it would be a yes. It just seems like it's just almost a rigged system to do it that way. So again, I would ask, why does this property need to be annexed when there's that much acreage of infill? And if you're just voting the way the comprehensive plan tells you to, and you don't have any free will with what your true thoughts are. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, though. You said you wish to speak and you're neutral.
Yep. It's going to be developed. I mean, I get that. I want it in the right way, that I think it should be R1S.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell anyone else not to develop their property, but I think to maintain the
Okay.
integrity of the
No,
area.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure because I would not have guessed that, but that, I appreciate your clarification. Wishing to testify neutral, Samantha Stigleader.
Mayor, Council, Samantha Stigleader, Knob Creek, Post Falls. Thank you, Councilman. I was neutral and didn't have anything to ask, except I did get confused during the presentation about development agreement versus annexation agreement versus putting density caps on, so I appreciate that clarification. That was really helpful. Actually live in this area as well and run across the street from on Grange where they're looking to develop, and while the acreage was cited as being smaller than it was supposed to be because of special use permits or something, it's a beautiful neighborhood. So I would just encourage the council to help use the tools that the city gives them through different development agreements to help the developer to continue to make these areas as beautiful as the Meadows is, because whether they're an acre or a half an acre, it's a fantastic neighborhood to run in, to ride bikes in, to take your kids to the park. I think it's really great. I am a little bit concerned about that. It looks like there's 2 lots that are on Grange that don't connect to like the little, like you go in the entrance and then it kind of goes to the right a little bit and there's like a little thing. It looks like there's 2 lots that are just on Grange. I wasn't sure about how the access, like how those 2 lots would be accessed, but maybe it can be explained and I'm not seeing it that well. And then my only other question to the developer, I guess, was what's the plan for the other lots that they own that are adjacent that we're not asking to annex or develop today? Because that's a little bit, I would be curious to know the answer to that question. But neutral in the idea that, like, I do agree, it would be nice if we didn't annex lots of things just right off the bat because they met the comprehensive plan as a way to subtly encourage developers to come up with really great ideas for pieces of land that are already within Post Falls. But I do understand that the tools that we have as local government are limited in property rights. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. In opposition, not wishing to speak, but asking that I read this, is Dr. Clevenger. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard here tonight. It is wonderful to be able to have our opinions heard. I really appreciate it. My name is Steve Clevenger. I live at 2357 West Grange Avenue in what used to be the old Grange. I practiced dentistry for many years before retiring. During that time, I often had to present unfortunate treatment choices to individuals that were suffering. When we ask ourselves how we got into such unpleasant circumstances, the answer almost always doesn't stem from one big bad decision, but results from many small poor choices. In the overall view of the city of Post Falls, to annex or not annex this parcel is a small decision, but this is a poor choice for the neighborhood and the community. I attended both public planning commission meetings as well as a council meeting last year when this project was presented and rejected. I don't recall a single neighbor standing up and saying this annexation is a good idea. Last night when I was thinking about what I wanted to say here, I thought I could review the many objections that have already been presented. I could point out that the project here tonight is simply a phased version of what was presented last time with all the attending problems. All they have done is divide it into two parts, two small bites of the apple instead of one big bite. It should be obvious that if you approve this tonight, the developer will be back seeking approval for the next phase in the future. Or I could point out how in the last couple of years that the traffic volume and speed has increased dramatically on McGuire. Your traffic studies report that the road could support more vehicles, but is that what is best for the neighborhood? The developer points out how there are two existing parks within 7/10 of a mile, but good luck to the children that try to cross McGuire even with crosswalks to access these parks. Allowing higher density housing at the expense of agricultural land and arguing that is better transition to the light industrial areas off Pleasant Valley, I believe that's Pleasant View, makes no sense. The existing zoning provides a much better transition. We need housing, but there are lots of areas within Post Falls that are much more suitable without expanding the city size. Please don't let unhindered growth diminish what we all enjoy about Post Falls. I urge you to vote against this annexation. Pause. One more thing. No matter how you vote, I want you to all do one thing tonight before you go to bed: floss. Spoken like a true dentist. Thank you. Not wishing to speak in opposition is Larry Castor. Grange through the Meadows subdivision is already too busy. Traffic is much too fast. Danger for residents and especially children. This rezoning will only make it worse. We need traffic control, speed bumps or dips and or closure to prevent it from being a through street. Wishing to testify in opposition, Teresa Fuller.
Hi, I'm Teresa Fuller, and I live on the corner of McGuire and Grange. And right now, we have one division in front of us across the street from McGuire. And if Ashford Place goes through, I will have another division to the right of me on Grange. And I really don't care for that. And so I wish to express my opposition for the following reasons. I believe divisions are divisive. They divide the existing community from the new community by facing all the houses inward and toward that community, while the existing houses usually face the street. Whereas the existing folks used to see grass, lawns, trees, maybe even mountains, now we see brown or white, long fences, few trees, and roofs. Yet the division uses all the resources of the existing community. Roads, creating more noisy traffic, parks if they do not provide one, water, etc. They certainly do not provide new neighbors for the existing community, nor beauty. They may even be the cause of higher taxes. So there's no reason for us to welcome them, as they completely ignore us and take up the beauty we had before. And with the lights, we can't see the stars at night as we used to. They give us nothing, yet expect us to welcome and support them. So unless the builders change the format and directionality of the houses to somehow include the existing neighbors, I am categorically against divisions, especially this one. Thank you for any consideration that you can give this.
Thank you. Wishing to speak in opposition is Jeff Adams.
Hi, I'm Jeff Adams. I live at 2534 West Grange Avenue. I oppose this subdivision as R1. I think R1S would be a better fit. They've already said they want to put shop houses on these. I've seen some of their other developments. There's not a whole lot left once you put a good-sized house and a shop on there. I seen off of the deal that the city is going to put fencing along McGuire and the railroad. I'm glad they're protecting their interests. They're not protecting any other surrounding property owners if they do. Another one. This is the City of Post Falls' Waste Collection System Master Plan. I read it. I'm sure you guys have too. But the thing that bothers me is when we bought our place in 2018, there was a moratorium on that nothing west of McGuire could be built out because of wastewater. I haven't seen any major infrastructure upgrades to accommodate for that. So I guess, you know, if you look at all the plans and everything that's being decommissioned, built out, this thing got started being written in 2017. It was actually officially submitted to the DEQ in 2019 with a 2, 5, 10-year and then a build out that was a last priority. Nowhere is McGuire or the Montrose lift station even listed for the next 10 years. So my question is, what's changed? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, wishing to speak in opposition is Donald Judd.
My name is Don Judd, and I live, my address is 2864 West Grange Avenue. We own, my wife and I own and farm the property immediately adjacent to the property that the developer now owns. Last year, they brought that to you for annexation, which included the piece that was adjacent to my property. Now they've brought the same development back to you in a parcel, excluding the part, tracks 94 or 64 and 97. But if you look at the plan closely, it's clear that there's been no change in their goal, which is develop, R1 develop all of that property. The reasons, you've heard the reasons why that the community objects to it. R1, traffic on Grange, Grange's construction, the devaluation of our property and our lifestyle from a pocket of this high density population in the middle of 5-acre lots. It's been proposed that it's a good transition to go from the meadows to R1 before you get to Corbin, which will be commercial and residential. That's not necessarily true. Even the comprehensive plan points out that in this West Prairie focus area, a sub-plan should be developed to help facilitate the development of property that will coexist with 5-acre larger lot sizes. The city zoning code, 181601, states that R1S zone is recognized, R1S zone recognized existing rural residential large lot uses and other areas suitable for large lot residential development with or without accessory agricultural. This zone should be applied where surrounding uses are compatible with large lot residential development. And in the comprehensive plan, it says this area may benefit from a sub-area plan that examines the lot and block development patterns that aid in a 5-acre lot transition. This plan should be, the decision of the last council should remain unchanged until there's a change in the proposal. And as it's been pointed out, there are a number of reasons why this is really not consistent with good development, sound planning, and the quality of life that the people who live here have experienced over the years that I've been here, which now is over 50. Thank you.
Thank you. Wishing to testify in opposition, William Fuller.
Thank you. My name is Bill Fuller. I live at 3235 North McGuire. That's the northwest corner of the intersection of Grange and McGuire. I'm opposed to this not because I'm opposed to development, but more from a historical standpoint. I'm old enough to remember developments going on when there was a pressure of individuals moving into an area, and there was a tremendous pressure on the city councils all up and down a corridor to build more homes, infill, get rid of the family farms, get rid of the tree orchards, and provide housing. And it started out gently with one development, two developments, just one or two developments, and a few of them. And then it picked up steam. It just kept going because more people saw it, they liked the living, and so they moved in. And the city councils, and there wasn't one, there was a number of them, all did the same thing. They looked at it, and they thought they had a good idea, and they were going to plan it out carefully. Well, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it started gradually. But after 40 years, or 30 and 40 years, what you have is a little bit like we have here with Coeur d'Alene, Dalton Gardens, Hayden, one city running into another city. The farms disappeared, and what you had is maybe 150 miles nonstop community development, all small family housing, R1 housing, and multiple family, high density housing, everything from real small lots to multifamily lots. And you can drive from one end of one county through 2 other counties, and you see nothing but asphalt, a few small parks, all the trees are gone, the orchards are gone, and the community life has degraded. It's not the same. And what I'm talking about has happened multiple times. This particular instance is from Imperial Beach, California on the Mexican border, all the way north to San Fernando Valley in northern Los Angeles County. One megalopolis. You see the same thing in western Washington. You're beginning to see the same thing here. And you see it across the entire country. People are wanting to develop, they want to move in. We live in an area that is very attractive. We have something here that many parts of the country do not have, and people are envious. We moved here just a brief time ago because of family. our family moved from Western Washington to Hayden and to Spokane Valley. And so we moved up to be close to them. We bought a 2.5 acre plot because we wanted the land. We were tired of living on a piece of 6,700 square foot land where we had no lawn, no yard to speak of. And to see this come in across the street from us, where we have 2.5 to 5 acre lots on our side of McGuire, half-acre lots on the other side of McGuire, and going down to what they say 2.7 lots per acre, and the builder says, well, it's going to be 0.25 to...
Could you wrap up, please?
Yeah, the builder says 0.25 acres per lot, up to maybe 0.7 or something like that. Well, 0.25 is 4 lots per acre, not the 2.7. So I would urge you to vote no on this and keep the quality of life the way it has been and what it should be, and slow down a little bit on this rush to infill. Thank you.
Thank you. Wishing to testify in opposition, Gail Randall. And Gail, since you're coming up to testify, I'm not going to read what you wrote.
My name's Gail Randall. I live on Fisher Avenue, which is 1 street north of Grange. And I sent an email to the City Council on June 10th of this year with specific references to the city and county comprehensive plans, explaining how I don't think this subdivision falls within certain guidelines of those plans. I hope you all had time to read that. In addition, I would like to say that the area between McGuire Road and Pleasant View Road from Celtice Way to Highway 54 has been designated as transitional. I don't really know what that designation means, but I counted about 10 5-acre parcels and 2 2.5-acre parcels on the west side of McGuire between Gabriel Estates subdivision and Grange Avenue. 7 parcels have homes on them, and 1 home on the 2.5-acre parcel, and a shop on 1 parcel, and 3 were bare land. To go from 1 house per 5 acres or even 2.5 acres to 2.7 homes per acre between Gabriel Estates subdivision and the proposed Ashford Place subdivision does not seem to be transitional to me or compatible with the surrounding area. It seems like a pretty drastic change. I feel the transition needs to be a bit more gradual. I'd like to stress one point that was in my prior email to the City Council, and that is that we're allowed to have farm animals, which can be stinky. We can shoot our guns for recreation, operate loud farm equipment, spray chemicals on our fields, burn our slash piles and garbage, and water our fields day and night with irrigation sprinklers, which are noisy. I really don't think this would be too appealing to families living in subdivisions that may border our properties. It's just not a good mix. Imagine that a subdivision was built bordering our 5-acre parcel and the houses bordering the back line of my property. We're trying to have a graduation party or family barbecue, and we decide to do hay that day or spray for weeds in our pasture or run our irrigation pipes. It's not fair to us or the subdivision homeowners. And I just want to thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you. And lastly, wishing to speak in opposition is Peter, is it Haynes? Haynes?
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. As you can tell, I and my neighbors.
Excuse me, just name for the record.
I'm sorry, Peter Hanos.
Thank you.
I live at 2984 West Grange Avenue. I've been there for 21 years. As each different development that you allow into my area, I get less infrastructure. I know you all believe that we should be getting more infrastructure. As everything grows, we get a better system and everything. It's not the case. I lose internet service every house that you allow into the area. My daughter was in college, was trying to do college from home because of COVID. She couldn't do it because we could only get 1.6 megabytes per second at our house. That's the max that we can get. And that's because of lack of infrastructure of internet, because of the use that you allowed into the area. The transitional that they mentioned from Pleasant View to, there's all businesses on the west side of Pleasant View. There's nothing on the east side of Pleasant View. It's farmland from there all the way to McGuire. And so there, you speak of transitional, there is no transition. And it's always been county on that side, city on that side. From what I understood, the idea from the city was to not grab more land from the county, but to use the land that they had already in the city. I don't know that that's changed or not, but apparently it sounds like it has. The sewer, he mentioned, the development, all of this development is going to have to be pumped. It's downhill from the sewer plant. So that's an extra tax on our infrastructure again. Electricity is going to be used to do that pumping. He said it would have been on sewer if that development was allowed in the county. No, it wouldn't have been allowed in the county. You can't put that development in the county. So no, this is hurting the aquifer because it wouldn't be put into the county. This will be put in, now it's going to actually affect the aquifer. On the traffic on McGuire, you're going to widen the area right there by this development, and then right after it bottlenecks back down to less width of the road down to Midway. And at Midway finally, well, eventually, as soon as they finish this development, it will be wider again. On Midway, there's been 4 to 5 accidents in the last year. So no, infrastructure traffic is not being thought of. This is not looked into. Traffic lights need to be, this is just from the infrastructure from the development over on the other side of McGuire, coming out onto McGuire. That's where those accidents are. No traffic light, no consideration, bottlenecks all the way down. You're going to widen it at the development and bottleneck back down to 2 lanes. So no, this isn't being thought out. You talk about the parks that are right across the street for these kids to be able to just go right across the street. If this street is big enough to handle this extra traffic, then it's too big for kids to go across. It can't be both. It can't be big enough for the extra traffic and small enough for kids to take their little bicycles across to the park. Now, you have one or the other. You don't have both. Well, this, as you can see, this has been a farming area. And this traditional or transitional part that you talk about, that they've been talking about, there's no transition. It's farm all the way until Pleasant View. Whether it's set for business or not, it could be, but right now it's all farm. So to stick in 2.7 houses per acre in the middle of the county, not annexed into the city yet, there's plenty of places in the city that are able to be used for these, however many houses it is. It's not that many.
Time's up. Could you wrap it up?
That should be good enough, I think.
Thank you. Applicant wish to rebut.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Gordon Dobler, Dobler Engineering. I'll talk to a few items. The access, let me pull this up real quick. Access on Grange. So the city has specific requirements that have to be met for access, whether it's driveways, street intersections, et cetera. And I think she was referring to these lots here. On Grange, the driveways are allowed at 75-foot spacing. One of these houses already exists, so we're keeping that, and these other 2 lots would meet the 75-foot spacing, so they will access Grange directly per the city's requirements. Sewer, the gentleman said sewer would have to be pumped. No, it won't have to be pumped. Sewer will gravity into the main in Howell. I don't know if staff might know if there's a downstream lift station, but this portion is gravity. It won't need pumps. And regarding sewer capacity, I'd have to refer that to staff. They would know, what's changed, I think was the question in the sewer master plan. But that's what I have.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Stoker, Coeur d'Alene. I'm one of the developers. I just wanted to go over a couple things. It's talked about what this would look like if we made these larger lots. Well, it's pretty simple to look at. You've got the existing roadway, so you've either got a choice where you can run the roadways basically the way they are, and to make half-acre lots, you just combine two lots. So these lots would be 200 feet wide about by 105 feet deep. All the way down along here, same thing over and through here, same thing down over here. Same thing on this side. If we took the road all the way in to the Adams property line and down south, these lots would be 100 feet wide by about 210 feet deep. We looked at this real closely when we were laying it out. We felt like this was one of the only reasonable layouts we could get. Part of what causes that is a normal 5-acre parcel is 660 feet by 330 feet. This parcel already has 30 feet out of it for McGuire. We would be dedicating an additional 25 feet for McGuire. So we were down to 275 feet with roadway being 65 feet wide. We're left with lots that are about 105 feet deep is all. Yes, we took the Kelly land parcel over here on the side out. Part of it was because the controversies that came up last time were much along the line of, hey, well, what are we going to do with across the frontage for Adams? We just didn't want to broach that right now. We didn't want to make that an additional complexity to your consideration of this. We already have a very nice buffer back here on the railroad. We think that this transition is a good transition. We'll be providing the city with a 1/4 mile of frontage for McGuire. When you look at the overall planning, that it comes over business, commercial to Corbin, you basically, if you go multifamily, high density, medium density, low density, you've got 660-foot increments if you divide it equally into 4s to make that transition. And I'd ask, hey, if we zone this R1S, then where does the R1 go? Where does the next domino go? I think personally, with the width of McGuire, this is a good transition for that. Yes, I feel for the people that have been in this area, but we tried to look at this with a lot of consideration for how it would lay out and the people. We had the neighborhood meeting. We'd be happy to have another neighborhood meeting and listen to what their concerns are and try to address them the best we can with staff. That's it. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
So should we, does Mr. Beecham have any comments on the sewer comments that were made, or is that appropriate right now?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay.
You just didn't want me to close the public hearing again.
No, I didn't.
Is he going to address
Let's
the
see.
2018
Let's see what he's
moratorium?
gonna say.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, John Beecham, Public Works Director. I could be wrong, and I could be corrected by engineering and the staff, but I don't believe we had a moratorium in 2018. We did do some upgrades to the downstream Montrose lift station. One of those was to connect it directly to the water reclamation facility, so that eliminated needing to pump through a second station. The other thing we've done is just upgrade the pumps over the last few years. Some of them were aging, so we've added capacity and added new pumps in that lift station. That's just more of a maintenance upgrade than anything. But the engineering analysis would stand as far as capacity from this development.
I think so. So what's changed is, the original plan was to build another lift station, but instead we upgraded an existing one, correct?
I'm not sure anything really changed from prior plans. I think the plan that was adopted does include this area and show how it can go into the Montrose lift station. I'm not sure if prior plans considered that or not, but that was an underlying assumption of those prior plans, even if it wasn't explicitly called out.
Okay. Thank you.
So I can speak a little bit to the moratorium. Had there been a moratorium, the council would have adopted it, and there was no moratorium.
Yeah, I was thinking I must have been absent that day.
Any other question before I close public hearing? Close public hearing. So the first question, does council want to entertain an annexation? Don't all speak at once. Okay, let's just,
A question I have with that might lead to that is, when it was denied a year ago, I wasn't here. Those who were here, can you speak to what was going on there? What went into that, if it's anything different than what we already heard?
I can speak to that because I was here. Part of the concern was that there was no development plan at all. So R1 is good for up to 5 units per acre, which I believe was way too dense for the area. So I said there was no development agreement. The other was that the parcel included the parcel on the other side of the Adams property, so it's a U-shape. So one, it completely surrounded their property, and two, you'd have improvements on Grange for a couple hundred feet, and then nothing, and then improvements on Grange for another couple hundred feet, which we thought was pretty goofy. So that was my rationale for voting against it then, is because the density wasn't established, except for it could be up to 5 units per acre, and the Grange frontage.
so let's have some discussion on whether or not you want to consider for annexation. Lynn, you want to lead off?
I still have a concern with the traffic flow onto Grange Avenue from any of these developments, and I think we've heard it, we've seen it in numerous documents, that traffic is a problem going through Grange, and I just think that this access onto McGuire is too close to Grange for still utilizing that instead of like Fisher Avenue or going down south to Howell and maybe using that. So I still have a concern for traffic.
Okay.
And the safety on the crossings.
Okay.
Not comfortable with that.
Kenny?
I would be more comfortable with annexation if I felt it was consistent with the transitional kind of process that we're seeing out there from the meadows across into more rural county property. So, I'm not in favor of annexing just for the sake of annexing. So I would not be in favor of annexing.
Okay. Kenny?
I'm not sold either way. The one concern I have with the traffic, but then also looking at the city line there on McGuire, it's the only one at this point into county lots. So with that, I would lean towards not annexing.
Jerry?
Well, I know it's transitional, but it is an abrupt transition. Although the 2.7 units per acre being in the development agreement with a density cap is a good thing. I wouldn't be opposed to the annexation of this property.
Josh?
I think at this point I would be opposed just with the quick transition from what's out there currently to the smaller lots. I'd be opposed to it at this point.
Joe?
This one's tough because now we do have some certainty on what the lot sizes will be, and we know it's not 4 or 5 units per acre, which is good. So you're still looking at pretty large lots. As far as annexing that particular piece, part of the goals and policies is encouraging orderly development. There's a lot of Grange to the south on the west side that will remain in the county. So the development of the improvements along Grange is going to be pretty isolated on that side of the street. Also, too, a year ago when we talked about the density and R1 not being appropriate, back in the old days, a year and a half, 2 years ago, how long ago this was, the other developments are R1S with PUDs overlaid over the top of them. So you got houses on lots as big as an acre and as small as I think a third in some parts of the Meadows development. which at the time I felt would be more appropriate. And I think I still feel that way, although we don't do PUDs anymore. So it's a tough one.
Well, I'd entertain a motion, one way or another.
I would move to deny Ashford Place Annexation File ANX 225.
Second.
Motion second. Further,
Who seconded that?
Josh. Further discussion? Roll call.
Walker,
Aye.
Thorson,
Nay.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Council, we've got a couple more items left. Does anybody need to take 5 minutes, or are we okay? Charge on.
I'm all right.
I guess.
You notice I was looking at you.
I know. You're looking right at me.
Next up is the unfinished business returning ordinances and resolutions, and tonight we do have 2 resolutions.
Well, do I make a motion now?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Okay. I move to approve Resolution FY 2023 Personnel Policy Changes.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We do have one more resolution.
May I mention that? I said personnel, but this says personal.
I
Is it-
caught that.
Is it 2 different things?
It will be fixed.
It's
Okay, thank
personnel.
you. Okay, I move to approve Resolution FY 2023 Forgone Tax Revised.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item up tonight is new business, and it's property purchase for public works, facilities, and parks.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. John Beecham, Public Works Director, here to present a potential land purchase for Public Works Department and also for the Parks Department. Dave is not here today, so if you have any hard questions, I'll direct them to him when he gets back. Give you a quick overview, talk about what the 2 different departments would use this for, talk about the financial impacts, and then if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out in the middle, but have some time at the end. Just by way of orientation, we're talking about purchasing this red parcel out near Pleasant View. That's between Pole Line and Grange. There's no roads there currently. This kind of gives you a sense for where things are at the city. We've got the water reclamation facility here, and we're sitting at City Hall here. So it's on the outskirts, to be sure. We're looking at a 14.5 acre parcel, and the price for that is $990,000, so not quite $1 million. Our proposal between Parks and Public Works is to split that cost and split the use of the land, 1/3 Parks and 2/3 Public Works. For Public Works, we would build a future Public Works Operations Center there. When I say future, I mean 1 to 2 decades from now, not something right away. And talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And for parks, it would be a public park, so not quite 5 acres. And as you saw in some of the hearings tonight, that is an area where they have an interest in building parks. So currently, all of our public works facilities, with the exception of the facilities crew themselves, are housed at the water reclamation facility. We've got the water shop, we've got streets and fleet leasing space there. So in 2005, this is what the water reclamation facility looked like. Kind of crazy when I looked at these pictures to look at that. In 2015, we had purchased the Mazda dealership next door, and we had added this set of ditches and clarifiers. 2018, we'd added headworks here in the corners and flow equalization, and currently the site is under pretty massive construction. We're adding tertiary treatment here in the southeast part of the plant, future ditches and clarifiers will go here and overlay onto the future streets and fleet facility. So you can see we're moving across that facility. The Water Reclamation Fund was the entity that purchased the Mazda dealership with the intention of someday expanding there. So we've been on borrowed time, so to speak, with streets and fleets ever since that was relocated there. So in 2021, we completed a facilities plan, and that facilities plan, as the top recommendation for Public Works, said we should purchase a piece of property, at least 8 acres. Council recommendation at the time was seek more if you can find it within budget for the future operations center. So essentially that's what we've located here. It fits in our development time frame. There's the price is right today because there is no road or utilities there. So that fits in our land purchasing budget. But in 15 to 20 years, the expectation is those services would be available. If there isn't growth and those utilities aren't there, that also likely means we don't expand the wastewater treatment plant as fast, so we don't need to kick streets and fleet out as quickly. So, in terms of parks, it's really pretty simple. It creates an opportunity for a public park in this area. In their master plan, they have the same sort of thing, objective of identifying parcels before they're needed where a park could be built, and the use of impact fees to buy this parcel would then allow either a developer to build a park or for impact fees to build a park when development reaches that area, if it does in the future. Kind of just picking a quick overview here, the green are public parks, so you can see there's some in the area, but getting close to a mile away at that point. So it would be a good location on their heat map, like was shown in the public hearings earlier for a public park. As we mentioned, the purchase price is not quite $1 million. There is almost $1 million in the Public Works land acquisition budget for this year. We would not be spending all of that, so we'd be spending the $660,000, and then the $330,000 expenditure fits within Parks impact fees budgeted for fiscal year 23. I should mention this would close after the turn of the fiscal year on October 1st. Just kind of an aerial of the property. I pulled this off Google Earth, but it's just a flat piece of land with a hedge around it. So it's undeveloped, nothing, no interesting topography to see there. You can kind of see the perspective with the city in the background. And with that, I'd happily answer any questions.
Well, what I like about it is it accomplishes 2 things. It provides for the parks and provides the space you need for public works. As you mentioned, we did talk about that in the master plan study that was done. And, you know, it's been said they don't make land anymore. And if we just sit tight and wait to purchase it, that cost is going to go up exponentially. I guess worst case scenario, we don't need it, we can sell it. So, and if the funds are there, you know, it's already budgeted for. My question would be, if you take $660,000 out of the acquisition, property acquisition fund, is that going to leave enough to accomplish other goals or needs that we see coming up?
So the facilities plan had a financial plan associated with it, and it goes out 20 plus years. There were more needs than funds at that time, so that $330,000 in savings could easily be applied to a future project or other needs as you all see fit with budget approvals.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
I think it's a great opportunity.
So I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the property purchase for Public Works facility and parks.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda tonight is citizens' issues, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address council regarding city-related issues that is not on the agenda. Seeing no one coming forth. Administrative staff reports. We do have 2. The first is a request for building and planning permit fee waiver for nonprofits.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we've included in your packet a draft of what a nonprofit fee waiver could look like. We reached out to various cities in Idaho to see if anyone is doing something like this. The request came from originally the Boys and Girls Club with their expansion, asking to have the building permit fees waived. For our economic development policy, we do allow companies coming to town that meet the qualifications for the incentives at the state level to have their fees at least partially waived. That's typically a 50% waiver. This does not include impact fees or capital improvement fees, capitalization fees. This is just on the building and planning review fees. And I'm just here to have conversation with you. If you have a desire to see something like this come forward, we'd actually bring a better draft to you that has any kind of comments or anything that you would like to see included within that policy for discussion.
When I received the request, you know, it's one of those things that your initial reaction is, yeah, we should waive it. You know, I mean, this is a feel-good. But then you realize what kind of can of worms you may be opening. Because if it's nonprofit, it's nonprofit. And so, you know, I kind of sat back, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. But when Shelley and I talked, I said I think it's important that we gauge council's interest in pursuing such a waiver.
I will make one just quick comment that I was going to include and forgot, is there is a cost for us to do these reviews. Many times on these smaller projects can be very intense because of the engineering and architectural firms that are used. And so if you do waive it, there is a cost to the city that is absorbed through other fees, basically.
That was gonna be my question, is what kind of cost to the city, what kind of donation would the city be making to these nonprofits?
It would depend upon the size
The
of the
size of the
project and
project,
the number of
yes.
submittals, yeah.
Yeah, which is why, and as much as I think the Boys and Girls Club is fantastic and do wonderful work for the community and at large, but it is basically just taking money out of the taxpayers' pockets and giving it to a nonprofit, which, you know, if it's just the Boys and Girls Club, great. Not even great. I would still be against it. I wouldn't feel too horrible about it, but there's nonprofits out there that I'm sure that taxpayers may not agree with their mission or just don't feel the necessity to support. So I think it's a dangerous precedent to set to do that, to be basically donating taxpayer money to nonprofits.
And my observation is, this is an extraordinarily generous community, especially to nonprofits on an individual basis. So I think it would be a can of worms, and I agree with Joe that I think it would be a donation that we'd be making, but we'd be making it with taxpayers' money.
I think that, I agree. I think that's the biggest consideration is it's not our money that we're spending toward any type of nonprofit, taxpayer money, but also having worked in the nonprofit world, I think the original or the initial impression of what nonprofit means is kind of that feel good, you know, the kids on the street corner selling cookies and things like that, when it really just is another business structure, and there's a lot of different ways to reallocate money. It doesn't mean that the money isn't there to pay for things like fees. So I would be opposed.
Again, you open it up, but you've opened it up, and it could be for everybody. So, I don't believe you need a motion.
This was for your discussion and get a sense of where you wanted us to go.
Everybody okay with that? Yep. Thank you. Shelley, thanks for bringing that forward.
Sure.
Next item, and this is another informational. We're getting informed a lot tonight. How development impact fees function in Idaho.
Well, there you have it.
There we go. Well, like, what happened to
Wake up, John.
Hey, John.
Well,
John,
I'm
surprise.
not used to
Embarrassingly, we'll
presenting
have
at the
to,
end of the meeting, you know?
say that I looked at a pre-agenda, I didn't see it, and I have it drafted, but if I have a PowerPoint, I probably could wing it, but.
You know, and we can move this to, so this is simply, we do have some updates coming forward. Will be for increases to the fees based upon cost, escalated prices for transportation, parks, and the police department. And so we can bring this back to the next meeting. It's not a problem at
I
all.
would move to table this item to the next meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion second. My only comment before I
Thanks,
take the
John.
roll is I would love to have watched you wing it.
I know.
Thought about it.
Well, roll call.
Thorson,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. John, I was just teasing. I really would not have liked to watch you wing it. Under mayor and council comments, I have two tonight, and I just want, I'd like everybody to confirm. I know there's been problems, we switched emails, et cetera, but Kenny, are you receiving all your city emails now? Lynn?
Yep.
Yes.
Maybe.
It's hard to know.
I'd just like to point out, he's the guy that wanted to reopen the public hearing.
It's hard to know what you don't get.
Yeah, but I mean, you are getting,
Yes.
okay.
I'm getting a steady stream of emails. There was one a few weeks ago that Shelley had said that she sent that I didn't get. But
I think he has me blocked.
I think he does. Josh? Carrie?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so what I would ask is, I know there are times that something doesn't come through, but if you get city emails, and I'm retired, I tend to check them a lot. But if you do get an email from the city, especially if it's from Shannon asking for times, Shannon has a job of herding cats. So what I would ask is if you get an email from Shannon asking availability for meetings, please respond as quickly as you can. I know everybody's busy, except us retired people. But if you could respond so she can coordinate these meetings, that would be very helpful. But again, if you're not getting your city emails, or if you think there's a problem, let us know. And the other thing I'd mention is, Rhiannon told me yesterday when I was in the office that she'd received I'd received a phone call she took for me that informing her that former councilor Betty Henderson had been transferred to the hospice house. So if people are so inclined to prayer, I would ask that you keep Betty Ann in your prayers. She served this city in many, many ways, not only through herself, but through her late husband, Frank. And they were quite the duo. So I was sad to hear, but I was talking with someone not too long ago, and they'd asked if I'd heard anything from Betty Ann, and I had not.
I was just thinking about her the other day,
But I
too.
did get that phone call yesterday, so. Council comments? None? We do need an executive session.
And I would move to enter into an executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061F to communicate with legal counsel for the public agency to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated, and no action will be taken, and session will last approximately 15 minutes.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Shove,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll enter executive session. Back to order. Is there any motion to come forward?
To adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.